So how you doing? How's your morning going?
It's okay. Very short, I basically got out of bed doing this, so
All right. See, that's what I'm saying. That's what
it's
I'm
going
saying.
fine.
All right. Okay. So we got. Okay. So I'm set up on the stream. So okay. I don't know how to do this. I guess I should do it side by side. Oh no. See, I'm a professional, as you can tell. Um. Oh no. I think I messed it up. Okay. All right. So say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
We got Mila in the chat, your favorite. Um,
It-
and yeah. So first of all, I want to say that we've had a rough time of this one, but I do appreciate you coming on the show. I also want to say for posterity, I never meant any harm. I never meant to hurt your feelings, and I apologize again if I did do that. I do get carried away sometimes, so bear with me. Um, I get swept up in the ocean, like a riptide kind of effect. Except that's me. I think this looks like shit, but I think this will do. I mean, I can see me, you can see me. Also,
Yep,
I've got your book right here. Check this out. Look at this.
Hey,
You're talking to a
nice.
fan. So I read this book, and I don't need it anymore because I already read it. But so all right. So we're gonna talk about January 6th. Let me retweet the stream here. January 6th. That was a long time ago now, wasn't
It
it?
was a long time ago.
Crazy.
It was like most of the year ago.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. I. Yep. Uh, which I have to say, usually, I think in the normal course of things, if somebody was like, "Hey, you want to talk about January 6th, the January 6th riot, and at like the end of November," I probably would say no, since I haven't, like it's sort of yesterday's news, and I think most of the reasons people were arguing about it probably aren't relevant, but because we didn't do it back when it would have been more, which is on me, as you alluded to, I didn't, like, it wasn't something that I wanted to do because the way that those first interactions have
Sure,
gone. But
sure.
now that we're cool, might as well do it now. We'll see if I remember anything about January 6th, and
Yeah,
let's
no,
uh, let's
see,
talk about it.
now, like, I think this whole thing started in May. In
Yep.
May, it was my birthday. That's my birthday is in May, so I was doing a lot of drugs. And so, I was looking forward to it, and then it didn't happen. And now we're here. Anyway, so I got a new shirt. Do you like my new shirt? It's new. It's like a sweater thing. It's comfortable. It's very comfortable.
Looks comfortable.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable. All right. So I wanted to talk about January 6th because my opinion. I
Yep.
guess we should start
Sure.
with my opinion on it, your
Yep.
opinion on it, and then we'll go from there.
Yep.
So,
Sounds good.
my opinion on January 6th was well, first of all, I did a live stream throughout the whole day. So like while it was happening, I was like, I was live, right? I was looking at all the streams. So like that's my experience. I know a lot of people experience January 6th like, like maybe they, turn the TV on and then saw like the recap or whatever. So but like I was watching the whole thing live. And so that I feel like that really changes my experience compared to a lot of other people because when I was watching it live, like you don't know what's going to happen. Right? Like if you're watching it like on January 7th, everything's good. They didn't win. But when you're watching them and you see them break in and you see the cops just go like, all right, whatever, and they just let him through, I was pretty scared. Because, and I said this on January 6th, that I felt like January 6th was an inside job. So that was like, that. I feel like that was readily apparent, given that the cops kind of just let them in after a point. And I think that there's been a lot of details that have come out about January 6th since then that kind of make that a little bit more of like something that we should worry about. Like the Eastman memo that came out. They said several times, never would have happened, whatever. But then it came out that Mike Pence did feel bullied by it. And he called Dan Quayle, of all people, is like, yo, what do I do here? And then, so he did feel bullied. He did feel pressured. We see, again, the infamous Steve Bannon clip on January 5th, where he's like, all hell's going to break loose tomorrow, right? The one of the most notable aspects of January 6th to me were the bombs planted at the RNC and DNC buildings that were meant to be like a distraction to bring, bomb squads and law enforcement, down the street so they weren't worried about the Capitol. I feel like there was enough planning of this that makes it something that we should really be worried about going forward. And yeah, I know most of the people involved, especially the people that got killed, were dumb. Like, I mean, let's be honest here. Republicans are fucking morons. Like, if you were to do a poll, like, what is the average IQ of Republicans? I think we'd get like 4. Like, like they're all just dumb as shit, right? And that's just my opinion, But there are some of them that are, ex-military, they're in that, they dabble in that universe. And so, and a little bit more background of me, I've dealt with right-wing militias. Like I've had like right-wing groups target me. I've been doxxed by right-wing groups. Like I've been harassed. I've been swatted by right-wing groups. So for me, my experience with these right-wing like militias and these groups, they're a lot more real to me than like, a fantasy or like, something that we talk about in the abstract. And so that's why I take January 6th so seriously, because I do feel like there was some cross coordination, whether or not it was like, super good. Obviously it wasn't good enough, right? Duh. But I feel like the cross coordination that there was, the planning by some people, like again, Steve Bannon saying that all hell's going to break loose. I feel like that makes January 6th a little bit, it's a problem. But that being said, I think that the idea that the Democrats are going to talk about it nonstop and not do anything is also a problem. 14th Amendment, Section 3 clearly states if you engage in insurrection, you're banned. Get out of here, buddy. And yet they've done nothing to hold anyone accountable at all. So I think that the Democrats are using this just for political theater. I think it's a huge waste of time on their end. And I personally, we can get a little bit further into it, but you go on now?
Sure. Yeah, that was actually really interesting because I think a couple of the things that we disagreed about in May, from what I got from that summary now, we might not, might be things where your point of view is more similar now because I think the original the two original things, as I recall from May, that were one that my saying that obviously January 6th, is a bad thing. It's a violent riot perpetrated by some of the worst and most insane people in the world. For a really bad purpose, right? It's not, it's that there's a that the most important difference, between it and other riots that I might feel differently about, from my perspective, is that oftentimes, even if somebody's rioting and it might be counterproductive, it might cause destruction and misery for some people who are affected by it. But at least, it's an outpouring of outrage over something legitimate, and this was an outpouring of outrage that was based on a lie. So it's a very bad thing. But from my perspective, it's a little bit like saying, the September 11th terrorist attacks were a very bad thing. They were, certainly, thousands of people murdered by, fascist like, religious fanatics. That's a bad thing. But I was really disturbed at the time, being very old, back then, by the way that it felt like the realistic threat that event, posed was exaggerated to a point that, that justified, in that case, obviously, starting wars, which was ridiculous. And similarly, I felt like this was a really bad thing, perpetrated by bad people whose realistic threat was being really exaggerated. And before we get to the stuff that I think I got wrong about that, which there certainly was some, but I do want to just say that the two things that surprised me about the summary that you just said just now were that, as I recall, it started because I was kind of rolling my eyes on Twitter about, that there were going to be the level of sort of big deal that was put into whether or not to have certain congressional investigations, which I thought, that like sort of continuing to flog this thing, months and months later, was going to be largely pointless. That and to me, it was kind of part of a way that this had been sort of mythologized, in a way that like saying, 9/11, where it just becomes the date, right? Like it's
Sure.
1/6 or, the insurrection, capital I. And then also, in sort of explaining why I thought that the threat, was really overstated. I said, that this was a riot, and riots are bad. They're particularly bad when they're bad causes. But this was a riot where nobody was actually killed by the rioters, and so as the sort of history of like really bad riots goes. It seems like it's actually a relatively minor event. Now, before I get into the stuff that I think I got wrong, both sort of in the like stuff I think I got wrong like right away, which then led me to I think some of the things that we do still disagree on, but also some of the things that I got wrong on the other end. I should say I did watch a little bit live on the day itself. Not that much. I'd actually had a stream on a completely different topic planned. We're going to do one on the Scorsese movie Mean Streets, so I actually rewatched that in the afternoon as people were
Okay.
texting me about what was going
I
on.
mean, you had work to do. Let's be honest.
and and then it was over, and I kind of like logged on and saw what was going on. I was like, okay, well, we're clearly not doing that, and caught myself up a little bit, and we actually did end up doing a stream on that, right? And we watched a little bit of it, live on it, and funnily enough, that stream was actually taken down by YouTube. And has
Yeah,
never been
mine as
restored.
well. I think almost every live stream was taken down, which is like that. I could talk about that for an hour as well, like just the censoring of history. But go on.
Yeah. Well, which is, I think. So, all right. Well, let's. I think the censorship is gonna tie into the story, but I think that so as far as like stuff I initially got wrong, like back in January, I think it was mostly stuff that everybody or almost everybody initially got wrong. It was stuff that all of the news reports that I was seeing at the time seemed to be getting wrong, or certainly quite a bit of it. And that was all the direction of overstating how much of a threat it was. So a lot of the reports that I saw, suggested that this was, and certainly a lot of the way that people were talking about it, suggested that this was a mostly armed crowd. Which turned out not to be true. There were certainly people there with homemade weapons, and I think there were a couple of people who, when they were arrested, that it actually says in the paperwork that they had guns on them. But the initial suggestion that this was something like the kind of militia protest where like most people have guns did seem to be part of a lot of the initial coverage, and I think it created a false impression. The probably more important thing that was wrong. Well, I think the two most important things that were wrong, and I think both of these, at least one of them, I actually definitely repeated in print just because I saw it was something that everybody was claiming, and and I had no reason to question it at the time. But one of them was the zip tie thing. That the suggestion there were people who had brought zip ties with them, which strongly suggested intention to kidnap people. And then later, when there was the actual investigation and people started to be charged and all that stuff, what came out then was that there were cops who had left some zip ties, and I think there were a couple of rioters who'd found them, picked them. I think there was the one guy who was actually charged with this that I recall. He was not one of those. There were people definitely like you're describing who were there. He doesn't seem to have been one of them, right? He
Sure.
wasn't like some like ex Navy SEAL, whatever. He was a bartender. He was at the protest with his mom, and he saw that, and he got his picture taken with the zip ties. That doesn't seem to be part of a kidnapping plot. And then the other more important one was Brian Sicknick, because this was really the overwhelming focus of most of the claims about about the severity of what had happened at the time, and the initial claim about Brian Sicknick was that he had been bashed in the head with a fire extinguisher and later died of his injuries. He'd like bled out and been taken to the emergency room, and he died, which I believed, because that was what was repeated in mainstream news sources, and I had no reason not to think it. But then that started to then the coroner pretty quickly said no, right? There's no blunt force trauma. That's not what happened. There was some speculation for a while back and forth that they said chemical chemical agents being sprayed. He might have had an allergic reaction to, although that still would have made it unclear whether that was the protesters or whether that was friendly fire from the cops spraying things. But then even that, according to the coroner, at least turned out not to be true. That they said that he had a heart attack. Now, I don't doubt for a second that the stress of dealing with a riot contributed to that heart attack, but I also see people who are very quick in this case to say, well, that means that essentially it's like the rioters killed him, and I guess the reason that I'm very reluctant to go there is, I sort of start to think, well, hold up. What if this were, like a riot, like, Minneapolis in the summer of 2020, and you had a cop who died of a heart attack? Would I really go along with the claim in that case? Well, essentially it's like the rioters killed him. I don't think I would. And then just real quickly, like on the mistakes of this kind, right? There was also, so I think there were three other people who died on the day itself, as opposed, there were cops who committed suicide. Again, I have no doubt that this contributed to why, and I think we have pretty direct evidence of that in some cases.
Sure.
Although I'd also point out that that the rate of suicide in general is pretty high among cops. That's actually one of the professions most likely to do that for whatever reason. We can speculate about, but yeah. but I think that as far as people who died there was one person who was reported at the time as having been trampled. Turns out that she actually had a drug overdose. Not being nearly as responsible as you were being on your birthday, I'm sure. And then the other two people, I think, one of them had a heart attack and one of them had a stroke, which, I don't want to be too callous about that, but, we are talking about probably a not very healthy, group of people here who were storming the Capitol. In various ways. The age tilts a little lower. I think also, like, a lot of these people are conspiracy theorists, QAnon people, and that involves, well, I guess this part is like us, but spending a lot of time, sitting down and staring at your computer.
Sure.
So that means that there was actually only one person who died as a result of violence on January 6th, which is Ashley Babbitt, who was a rioter, right? Who was killed by the cops. Now, she wasn't killed by the cops while minding her own business. I'm not making any sort of claim like that, but I do think, I do think that puts things in a little bit of a different light. So I think that all of that stuff to me, it seems like it's sort of at this point it's like gospel on a lot of the left that we should think of January 6th as this like near miss fascist coup that like it was like minutes away from Congress people being massacred and etc. And I don't think that that's true. I think there are scenarios where there would have been more violence than there was, but I think the idea that there was any scenario where this would have led to the government being overthrown or anything like that. I have a hard time seeing it. Now, I should say, because I said I would do this, and then I'll wrap up and throw back. But like that I think there are things that I got wrong on the other end later. That when I said. So I wrote an article with Daniel Bessner for Jacobin, where we said a lot of the stuff that I'm saying now, or not, actually not the first stuff, because that was like, I think we actually repeated some of the first stuff, that like, because I
Sure.
think a lot of those things hadn't been debunked yet, but like a lot of things I'm saying now about why I think it's a mistake to sort of elevate it to the level of this, near miss fascist coup. So we wrote that, and I wrote something kind of similar for the Nation, but then I think that the stuff that I or we got wrong there, maybe, right. Speaking for myself, I don't know if Danny would agree. He's, I think he probably would say that it's that some of the stuff we should still wait and see what happens, but I'll just go ahead and say, right. So I think the stuff that we got wrong was mostly about the consequences of getting this wrong, right? In other words, like the same way that you might think the consequences of getting it wrong in the direction that maybe you think I get it wrong is like not being vigilant enough about the threat of fascism or things like things of this nature. I think the stuff that we were worried about the consequences of getting it wrong from our perspective were more like that elevated it to this event, the insurrection that was this big, like urgent, fascist threat to like regular bourgeois democratic, institutions, seemed to be used as a pretext for strengthening the national security state, which of course we know, and I think you'd agree, for many points in the past is very bad news and very worrying. When that's strengthened and beefed up, and there's more surveillance and and all that stuff. So I think that was like the main thing that we were worried about. And so a little bit, but not nearly as much as I thought there might be, at least thus far. And then also, and this one is actually kind of hilarious now because it was so wrong. But that it would be used by a lot of Republicans because like right then in January, it kind of looked for a minute like this was going to happen. Then it did not happen at all. But then it was going to be like used by a lot of Republicans as a way of like Trump washing, like say like distancing themselves from all the all the bad stuff that happened under Trump, and yeah, no, nobody.
Oh, it's part of the lore now. For them, it's like they're gonna celebrate it next year like a holiday.
Yeah, I actually saw. Well, no. Well, to be fair, the only person I've seen say they were going to treat it like a holiday was one of the few people who is actually an anti-Trump Republican. I think it was Liz Cheney. I might be getting this wrong. Who I said saying that like every year on like the 4th of July, she's gonna like watch the footage to remind herself or something. I was like, it's like, man, that sounds like a fun holiday. I really want to be part of that one.
All right. So are you done? All right.
Yeah,
so I would like to
you go.
title
Yep,
my response, Ben Burgis, what he got right, how he went wrong, and why it still matters. So
Sure.
I think that I think
like
the event itself, I think, is irrespective. I think we can talk about the event itself and then also the repercussions and how it has affected the rights culture. I think like laser focusing on deaths, I think, instead of just the overall kind of like, because there are a lot of people that are injured, there's like 150, people that were injured. I'm talking about the police. And so like, they did do damage. I don't think like if someone gets run over by a truck, but they're still alive, they still got run over by a truck, like it sucks. So I think the laser focus on deaths, I think is a little bit of like minimizing the amount of it that happened. But that's not the biggest deal. I think that where I got really kind of like I think where I kind of doubled down on my position that January 6th was really bad was when I saw Ashley Babbitt's like memorial. Did you see any of that? Like where her parents threw like a birthday party?
Oh yeah, I mean I've seen some of the other Ashley Babbitt stuff. I think I missed the
Oh,
birthday
you
party.
gotta watch it.
Yeah.
It's one hell. Oh my god, I got goosebumps just thinking of it. They did a musical number. It was amazing. But like, yep, yep.
They did a
They
musical
did a
number.
musical number. They had some guy with a guitar, and he did some ad lib about Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. Oh, it was great. You gotta watch it.
Yeah, wow. All right.
But yeah, so I think that they're mythologizing this, and I think that that's a huge problem. I mean, if you look at the the level of conspiratorial behavior from the Republicans from like March, like really, let's just start from the pandemic up until now. It's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I have people in my family that have kind of fallen for a lot of this over the course of the last like year and a half or so. And so like I'm a little bit more like, I don't know if you have people in your family that are QAnon, right? But I've had conversations with people that like, a year ago they're totally normal, and now they're talking about like how Antifa's in buses rolling around the country setting things on fire, right? And so like the conspiratorial nature of the Republican Party, it's always been bad. I mean, when we live in a country where 70% of the citizens in this country think that like Jesus is watching them jerk off, that's a problem, right? So there's a lot of people in America that are just like really like, they're not that bright, and they will just go to conspiracies. And the Republican Party is like, they're really thinking about this like it was like they're mythologizing it. Like Ashley Babbitt's a martyr, right? She died for like, the empire of Trump or whatever. And so I am less concerned with the idea that they almost took over government. That's very unlikely. Like, yeah, I think it's very interesting that the panic buttons in several congressional offices were removed the day beforehand. Mike Pence was locked out of his office. He got stuck in a loading bay as well on that day. So, like, there was a lot of, like the National Guard was delayed in their mobilization. So I think that, there may be, if we have like a quantum computer and we're looking at the many worlds, there might be a world where they took over the government. It's possible. But I'm less concerned with that and more concerned with the level of violence on the right that's going on, especially now that, the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict came in, right? We are like, I think that we're looking at a situation where, look at the Democrats and their polling. Oh my God. Like, I don't think Trump needs a coup to, be president again. I don't think that should be the focus. I think we should focus on the level of right-wing violence in this country and how normalized it is becoming, right? Where we've got 40 to 50% of Republicans that think the election was stolen, right? That's crazy, right? That's insane. You can't even where the election was stolen in 2000, you can't get half of Democrats to say, yeah, they stole that election, because they're afraid, oh, what if I say this and then someone come on, they stole that shit in 2000, right? But Democrats are not going to, they're not going to go that extra length where Republicans are. And then you've got this is the party of pro-gun, they love guns, they love violence. Kyle Rittenhouse is being mythologized as a hero, right? They've got Ashley Babbitt as a hero. They're all working to kind of advance their agenda. And I don't think they need to take over government. I think that the Capitol riot or insurrection, whatever you want to call it, I think is a show of strength. It's kind of yeah, we can do this if we want to. What are you going to do about it, Jack? And that's what's that's what I'm afraid of. Because again, I've been the target of right-wing militias. I've been on lists. I've had people harass me and all that kind of stuff. So I know how dangerous this can be. I've been to protests. I've been to riots, if you want to call them that. So I know that the level of danger here is very severe. And I think that we're at this moment in American history where it's like a ticking time bomb. Like any moment, I feel like last year kind of proved that at any moment shit can just pop off, right? Anything can happen at any moment. I think last year proved that. I think January 6th proved that. I think we're living in this kind of weird society where it's the world is ending, but we're all still going to work and we're pretending the world's not ending. But then a pin will drop off the Empire State Building, and then that's going to be the trigger to end the world. And so I am more concerned with the level of violence that's happening, the very short prison sentences that are being dished out. I mean, I know they've given a couple of examples to the shaman guy, that guy, he's getting thrown under the bus. But I mean, when you look at shit Steve Bannon's not going to go to jail for this. Donald Trump's not going to go to jail for this, right? The people that orchestrated this, Mo Brooks or whatever, he's not going to go to jail for this. None of these people that actually tried to instigate this, none of the the leaders, right, are going to be held accountable at all. Donald Trump, like, I'm afraid that he might win in 2024 and then pardon all of his goons if they're still in there. And, you know, like, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of the right-wing violence in this country. And January 6th proves that they don't care. Like, all that whole thing in 2020, oh, the cops, oh, we love the thin blue line. They don't care about cops. They don't give a shit. Now, I don't either. Like, I wish more cops died on January 6th, to be honest with you. Like, that's the one good part of it. But, I think that the level of depravity from these people is insane. They've got the whole government working for them. Like, if Trump wins again, right, then they're gonna have the whole government working for them. If the Democrats are so bad at this, like, everything is so bad right now, I feel like shit's gonna pop. I feel like Republicans are probably gonna win all three houses, or, you know, the Senate, the House, and the presidency. They've already got the Supreme Court. I think if that happens, I think we're fucked. And so, like, that's my thing. Is like, I just think that there's so many problems here. I don't want to necessarily go like, oh, you know, this person died because of that, and that person died because of that, and, you know, they were 30 minutes away, 40 seconds away. Like, yes, January 6th, the event itself is an important thing. Again, Mike Pence was locked out of his office. That's weird. Congressional panic buttons were removed. That's weird. Bombs were planted at other buildings the night before, right? That's weird. That shows a level of intent, right? But I think it was more of a show of force. And we're seeing that right now the Republican Party is getting more and more radicalized, especially with this Kyle Rittenhouse thing. You've got these people like Matt Gaetz is offering him like, you know, an internship. You got Paul Gosar trying to give him a Medal of Freedom or some shit. Like, this guy went to a protest as a teenager and killed people for fun. Like, he was on tape saying, I want to kill these people 2 weeks beforehand. He killed them, and then he got off. That's a problem, right? Like, and then you look at, like all of this going on right now, I feel like we're just in a really bad spot. And I don't think January 6th was some, like, outlier event. I think it was, like, on a continuum of events that are going to get more and more violent. They're going to be more and more dangerous. And I think that because they did it at Congress, right, the Democrats are, like, you know, trying to make it a big deal, but they're failing at every turn. 14th Amendment, Section 3. They're literally, like, the Republican Party, besides, like, Kinzinger and Cheney, which, you know, they should be fucked off for other reasons, right? Like, they're all illegal. They're unconstitutional. Their seats are fake. They should be banned, right? We fought a war. The Civil War was fought. They had the 14th Amendment was ratified that said if people engage in insurrection, let's kick them out. And then that happened, and they're just still there. They're still, like, there's, like, Ted Cruz is still talking about banning Big Bird, right? Like, Josh Hawley's talking about porn. They're still there. What the fuck is going on with that shit? That's my thing. But anyway, I've kind of thrown a lot at you. What do you think?
Sure. Well, I don't think it's true that 74% of Americans think that Jesus is washing them when they're masturbating. I think 65% of Americans consider themselves Christians. It's probably less than that.
Sure,
the Jesus masturbation thing. But yeah, so what do I think about all that? Yeah, I mean, there are parts of that I agree with. So let's see. I mean, I will say, just to get it out of the way, that I mean, on the laser focusing on the deaths, I would point out that, like, you know, back in May, the deaths seemed to be a lot of the disagreement then, you know. So I think it is worth going back over. And I also think maybe it's significant because if you do think, and I mean, you know, it kind of sounded like you were saying that as you're thinking about this has evolved, this is not necessarily what you think right now. But, like, if you do think, as many people seem to, that the event itself, you know, was this big threat to the functioning of normal, you know, capitalist democratic institutions, and that, you know, that this really was something like an earnest fascist coup. I mean, the fact that that nobody died even as a result of except in that very indirect stress way, you know, violence by rioters, and that there didn't even seem to be any, like, direct attempts at murder, do seem relevant there to how, you know, to the scale of it. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't violent or that it wasn't bad or that people who did violent things shouldn't be arrested and charged. You know, I think, you know, I think all of that stuff, although I also think that I also do see some people on the left who, it seems to me, like, in this sort of desire to punish this, like, it feels a little inconsistent, with the sort of principles that people would normally have, right? I mean, there are people who would. I'm certainly somebody who thinks that the U.S. criminal justice system is way, way, way too punitive. I don't think I go as far as actual like prison abolitionism, although there are plenty of people on the left who would go that far. And yeah, like you, right? And there does seem to be some tension between that and people should be getting more prison time, but I think, and especially because it seems to me, and again, this I think I agree with half of what you said about this, but it seems to me that a lot of the January 6 rioters aren't getting off easy at all, right? That you had people who, I don't think this is by any means unique to them, but I mean it's just that the United States has a awful fucked up criminal justice system, who had spent months in some really awful conditions, that have been reported, and you have some absurd sentences like the one you mentioned, right? That the Q shaman, who I think in a more reasonable criminal justice system would get like I don't know, some mental health counseling maybe, but that would probably be that, is getting 3 years and change in prison. I don't think anybody's alleged that that he did anything violent. And my impression of other sentences I've seen has been similar. Now, the half of what you said about this that I agree with is that actually what's galling about that to me is the contrast. That if anybody should be punished for this, it shouldn't be some like mentally ill QAnon believer who showed up and did some like theatrical things in the Capitol, but didn't actually, personally do anything violent. It should be, the ringleaders, right? In fact, I think, a really good point about this that was made by Matt Leck when I had him on. We were talking about this. It was that, like, some of this, like, if you imagine, the role reversal that, like, there were people who I believed who said that the side that I wanted to win had actually won the election. People had voted for it, but it was being stolen, and you should go and try to stop it, right? Look, if we could even make it really concrete. You mentioned earlier the 2000 election, which actually was stolen. And so if in 2000, like the day that the vote had been certified, there was a giant protest outside, which there should have been, but there was not. There's a giant protest outside of the certification, and if some group of the protesters had broken through police barricades and streamed into the Capitol, let's put it this way: if I hadn't joined them, it wouldn't be because what I thought they were doing was wrong. It would be because, like, okay, I don't want to take the risk or something like that, right? And I think that's so. I think that if there is punishment, it should be for much beyond people who did particular violent things that day, who of course should be punished for that. But beyond that, right? It shouldn't be for the rubes who believed it, right? It should be for the people telling the original lies that got them to believe it. I actually also think it's pretty important when people make historical comparisons about fascism, and it's like, I've seen people say, oh, it's like when the French Parliament was stormed in 1930, whatever, et cetera. I do think it's not an insignificant difference that like the people involved in these historical fascist examples understood that they were against democracy, and that they understood that to be the point, right? People on January 6th understood themselves to be defending democracy. They thought that there was this in progress coup against the legitimate results of the election, and that they were there to stop it. So I would say, as far as the idea that there was a show of strength, in a certain respect, I kind of have the opposite take on that. I think it was I think if anything, I think at the time, right, not necessarily long term, I think you're right about some of that, but like at the time, it was, if anything, a demonstration of just how weak Trump's position was, that he had just gone through months of begging anybody, to change the election results for him, and nobody going for it. He'd spent months, trying to get together all these lawsuits that were laughed out of court with like everything short of like just lol fuck no, written in crayon on a piece of paper, by Republican appointed judges, by Trump appointed judges, in some cases. Even Mike Pence, his own vice president, wouldn't do what he wanted him to do, right? As you say, the thing he felt bullied to do. So the courts wouldn't save him. There was a minute where a lot of people on the left were very worried that the military, was going to save him, because, of staffing changes to the Pentagon. That certainly wasn't going to happen. He'd certainly alienated all those people. And even Mike Pence wouldn't save him. So what he was left with at the end was this sort of crowd of, the 800, pudgy boomer, online conspiracy theorists, some of whom, yes, were like real insurrectionary fantasists who do things like put the bombs with no triggers at the DNC and RNC to try to detract attention, which is like, I think when we were originally talking about this over DM, I said reminds me of the kind of thing that, like, I don't know, like the Weathermen would have done, like a protest in the late 60s, early 70s. But most of whom were just kind of clueless and sort of didn't know what to do, when they got there. I would point out with regard to the panic buttons, that this was widely said at the time, but according to the Washington Post, the article I'm looking at was from February 8th. It's by Greg Sargent. And this is, I think, a paper that cannot be accused of minimizing January 6th. They said that as it turns out, there may be a less sinister explanation. Democratic aide to the House Administration Committee, which is examining the matter, tells me that the preliminary belief is that might have been a mistake. He emailed. Preliminary investigation shows that Presley's office was inadvertently placed on an architect of the Capitol move list, and a vendor wrongly removed their direct buttons during a clerical screw-up. The aide added that it's highly likely relevant that Presley took the office of former Congresswoman Katie Hill in an office swap at the beginning of last Congress, etc. Right? So I think that might not have been what it looked like. I don't know if that matters that much, but just for the record.
Convenient explanation, I'll say.
Okay, I don't know. But I think the thing that you said that I agree with that's the most important is that Trump doesn't need a coup to be president again. I think that's for sure true. I think that there's a good chance that he will be president again, which would be awful. Just to be whiny and self-indulgent for like 30 seconds, then I promise I'll stop. I often think that one of the ironic things about how mad some people got about the January 6th take is that it was like whiplash because previously all the usually when people are mad at me about intra-left shit, it's in the opposite direction. It's people who are still furious that I thought that Force the Vote was dumb, or it's people who because I did a segment defending Anna Kasparian, during the Aaron Mate stuff, or it's because there are people who think that I'm a sellout because during the 2020 election I said that if you I'm not going to yell at anybody or scold anybody who makes a different call. But my strong advice, and I even did debates about this, if for anybody who wants my advice, would be that if you live in a swing state, you should vote for Biden. Lots of people thought that I was an awful sellout for saying that. Etc.
I agree with all those hot takes. I lived in North Carolina. I voted for Biden. Forced the vote was stupid. Absolutely, we're in agreement on that shit.
Yeah. So it's just kind of it doesn't mean either group is wrong. Could be one of the other is wrong. Could be they're both right. Everybody should be mad at me, but
they're wrong. I'm going to go out there and they're wrong.
but it is kind of funny, right? Because it's sort of opposite groups who dislike these different takes. But
Sure.
but anyway, I think that so I think Trump could be president again. I think that would be really bad. I don't think that the danger that Trump posed was that like we were going to end, like formal, bourgeois democracy in the United States. We're going to have fascism. I think that was overstated, but I think Trump was plenty dangerous without that, and you don't kind of need that, right? To say that it mattered for Trump not to be president anymore and he shouldn't be president again, and that would be really terrible if he was. So we want to avoid that if at all possible. And as you say, not only does he not need a coup to be president again, but I mean, I think that that's like far and away the least likely scenario by which he would be, president
Sure.
again, right? Like I think that anything that I would worry about. So I did a previous the so one of the previous discussions that I did about this topic was with the guys from the Know Your Enemy podcast, Matt Sedman and Adler Bell, and in that discussion, they sort of said, well, we should we should think that there was a higher level threat than I think there was on January 6th, because you got to take it seriously, because next time it might work. And I was kind of trying to press a little bit on what next time means, right? Does that mean next time there's like there are like QAnon people and some militia people and and just some random dumb Republicans storming the Capitol, that'll be like a successful coup. He was like, no, it would be like a judicial thing and whatever. So I was like, oh, but wait a second, that already happened. Like that literally you're describing what happened 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that this makes that more likely. I think that was already, as likely, as likely as it was going to be, without it. But I think the most important thing is okay. I mean, I can't control what like judges do. Unfortunately, I think there's a discussion to be had about taking away a lot of their power. But meanwhile, though, right? Like just in terms of politics, right? The thing that we all comment on, right? Like I think that the most important thing is that the election, not be close enough that courts get to decide what happens. And given that, right, like I feel like this does kind of take us full circle on the January 6th thing, because my possibly dumb, possibly too snarky, tweet, that sort of started our whole saga here, was this is basically the correct response, quote tweeting somebody who has responded to Ilhan Omar, who's actually one of the congressmen that I like most, but
Congressman Ilhan Omar just got misgendered live on stream, canceled.
Yes. All right. I'll do. All right. Well, I'll come back in 3 months to to talk that one out. But
Sure.
but yeah, but she was she was tweeting about how we need to have more hearings about this, and and somebody did the little healthcare please thing, and I said this basically the right response, meaning not that Ilhan Omar who see above I've certainly defended what I thought that I thought she merited defense, but and I've been a fan of, but is somebody overall is somebody who it's not that she's not on the right side of that or doesn't care about it. It's just that like the sort of liberal obsession, it seems to me, with this event is a way of letting liberals continue to make politics all Trump all the time. That's that's what they wanted to do throughout. I mean, obviously, that's what happened while he was president. That all politics kind of got reduced to like Trump good, Trump Trump bad, is Trump is very bad. Everybody needs to rally behind us because we're the sensible, people who don't like Trump. And so, so there were like 4 years when all you saw on MSNBC was Russiagate, and it feels to me like this is sort of like what replaced it. Is January 6th, and it's a way to just continue having all of liberal politics be all about, be about like Donald Trump and being anti-Trump, which is I think a really bad strategy. Like take all the morality, take all of the like who's right about what part of the original thing out of it. I think just politically, it's a really bad strategy. I think if you look at like what just happened in Virginia, I mean, I think that's really worrying sort of like preview of what might be things to come. That like you had the Republicans very whipped up over their bullshit, and then Terry McAuliffe really have like a positive agenda that he was getting people excited about.
Sure.
What he had was, hey, do you know that Youngkin, is associated with Trump? Trump.
I mean, yeah, they paid for the mailers that were like Trump endorsed Youngkin or whatever, and it's like, and most people were like, oh, that's good, So
I mean, I don't know about most people, but like certainly the core, like Republicans like thought that it was good, and all the people, because I believe Biden actually won Virginia, in
Yep.
last year. So I mean, there very well might be. In fact, there probably are, right, more people in Virginia who think that that's bad than who think it's good, but it's not enough. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not enough to get people to come out to vote for McAuliffe because like, well, they kind of know that Trump's not on the ballot, and like it's very, that's the kind of thing, like people who are sort of casual anti-Trump voters who aren't then necessarily that invested in politics, but sure, maybe in 2020 there's a plague, everything's on fire, it's a presidential election people have been talking about for the last 2 years, they'll come out for that, right? That's certainly not enough to get them to come out for this. And I think that by the time we get to 2022, if Biden or God help us, Kamala Harris is running on, I mean, I don't think she'd be a good candidate. That's my point about that. I think she'd be a extraordinarily bad candidate. But if Biden or Harris is running on, hey, remember how bad Trump was, I think that too many of those people will say, yeah, okay, but like, what have you done for me lately? And if the answer is not much, I'm not going to come out and vote for you. And so I think that like the reason that seems like kind of a correct response to me is that it's like, look, January 6th, I mean, I think riots are generally bad. They might sometimes be justified, but like as a general rule, they're very bad. This one sure as hell wasn't justified. It was based on crazy lies. If you want to find an appropriate way to punish people who told those lies, I could maybe get behind that. I will say that I think the way tax censorship, as we were both victims of, has really amped up since then, is worried, not because it's the hugest deal in the world that we got our streams taken down, but that this company that these like few companies that own so much, that control so much of the flow of information in our society, have gotten so much more like hair trigger about censorship. That's really bad. But I think that the big thing is just like that. Yes, this was a bad thing. It was a violent riot for a bad and stupid, both of those things, both bad and stupid cause. But I think continued fixation on this like feeds into a kind of politics that I think is really unhelpful. That like I think that it's like, no, I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear another year or another 2 years about the January 6th riot, right? I want healthcare, let healthcare stand in for the rest of it, right? Like for the Democrats doing anything big and important, right? I want, because I want that stuff, not just because it would be would be like obviously like hugely important in human terms, but also because I think that without a little bit of that, right, without something to show people that like look at what they did for you, I think Trump probably is going to win in 2024.
Yeah, well, I want to my response. I got a lot of things to respond to. You went off on a soliloquy there.
Yeah, I did.
But so I think Hillary Clinton should run. If Kamala Harris is the only person left standing, I'd rather have Hillary Clinton run. I think she's got like a 32% approval rating and Kamala's got 28. So that's my primary dreams. I want to see Hillary Clinton and Kamala go at it. But I think one of the big things about my response that makes me take January 6th more seriously is I think liberals, like Democrats, those kinds of people, I think they have no fucking idea what the fuck they're doing. And I think that the idea that they're going to focus on something like January 6th, right, to such an extent, like you say, like, oh, it's the biggest deal in the world. I agree with that. But then they're going to go around and do this mansion cinema, oh, we got to take that out of the bill, that out of the bill. Oh, we're going to give you nothing. And then they're going to be surprised when they lost Virginia, right? Liberals are fucking dumb. They're dumb motherfuckers. I can't stand them. I think they're ridiculous. And the idea that they have any, like, they think that they've got any like kind of like, position at all to say January 6th is bad, and they're not doing anything to prevent it from happening again. They're not invoking the 14th Amendment. They're not, providing any, they've got all three, houses or whatever. They're not doing anything, right? Like, the Democrats are just garbage. They're trash. And that's what makes me more afraid of the Republicans. And that's what makes me more afraid of, based on what happened in January 6th, right? Like, I don't think one of the things that you do that I disagree with is you like try to use riot as an umbrella. I think what happened on January 6th and what happened in 2020 are completely different animals. I think in 2020, those riots, I would prefer the term uprising, but that's just me. I think those are mostly like a natural kind of reaction to the world that we're living in. We're in late stage capitalism. Society has fallen the fuck apart. People can't feed their children. People are getting sick and dying. There's like hundreds of thousands of of children have lost at least one parent due to coronavirus, right? That's a huge problem, right? There's a lot of orphans, right? Society is crumbling. So I think those reactions are more of like along the lines of a natural disaster, right? Like it's just the reaction to the fact that we haven't had anything good happen in the last, like, I don't know, like ever, right? Whereas I think what happened on January 6th is more of like, it's a show of strength in the fact that some dumb motherfucking orange guy, right, can lie enough and get enough people to go out there and try to kill people, and they could have failed, or like just wander and like, it's not so much of a natural reaction. It's like them directly responding to the programming that they've been fed. They've been programmed to do these certain things and to have a proclivity toward violence. And that, to me, like the level of being able to be programmed is what I feel like is the problem here. Because, yeah, sure, there are only like, like 1,000 motherfuckers that went into the Capitol, right? But they're all over the place when you look at it, right? When you look at like half of Republicans think the election was stolen. Well, what are the Republicans? That's like, what, 25, 30% of the country maybe, right? So half of that 12% of the country, let's just round it down for the, 10% of the country thinks the election was stolen, right? What percentage of them are ex-military, have like, training of that kind, or have a proclivity to violence? I mean, like, look at the fascination with guns and the Second Amendment on the Republican side. Now, personally, I am not like a, super gun control kind of person. I honestly, it's a hard conversation. I would prefer to not live in a world where we had guns. I think guns are fucking stupid. That being said, if Republicans are going to have guns, if these crazy motherfuckers are going to have guns, I'm going to have a fucking gun, right? So that's the world that I, like, that's my politics on that one. Right? But liberals, they're like, they just think that if they, like, wag their finger, like Babu from Seinfeld, that like the world's just like, everyone's gonna, oh, well, the liberals, they did this, and so we gotta stop now. That's not the world we live in, right? Power, the way it is right now, is really like, if someone has a gun, they win, right? And so it's like, if we're in a situation where like we have 10% of the country that believes the election was stolen, all you need is like, 1% of the country that has guns and is willing to kill everyone else. Like, look at what happened at that Charlie Kirk event where someone was like, like, oh, when can we start shooting these people? Right? Like, they want to use the guns. They want to engage in violence. And there's really not that much of a reaction on the left side. I mean, we have like anti-fascists, which I consider myself a part of, right? That are like, yeah, we need to like actually train up. We need to actually like know what the threat is, and we have to respond in kind. But most of what you see on the left side of things are liberals going like, oh, how dare you, good sir. can't believe they would do that, right? And then they're not doing anything about it, right? And that's the problem, is that again, look at, like, everyone hates Joe Biden, right? You know, like, everyone, like, whenever I see someone say fuck Joe Biden, I'm like, I agree, but, like, also, do you want to kill me too, right? Like, no one likes Joe Biden. Like, there was a poll that came out that was like, you know, like 60% of Democrats were super enthralled with him in January, but now it's like 30%. Like, he's lost. No one likes the guy, right? We're back in that situation where everything feels like society is crumbling, right? Like, people cannot, like, you know, like, there's like an eviction crisis, you know, people can't afford food, right? Like, everything is horrible. But then you've got the Republicans that are all swept up in this fantasy land conspiratorial thinking where, like, you know, they're now in the position where they think the election was stolen. They think that they're living in, like, oh, forcing me to take medication to stop myself from getting sick is the same thing as Nazi Germany. I'm going to shoot you, right? They're fucking crazy. Like, I mean, again, I'm going back to the Jesus and jerking off, right? Like, when you got a country where, like, maybe not all of the Christians think that Jesus is watching them, right? But, like, when you got a country where 65-70% of the country thinks that there's angels, oh yeah, God's raining down with like, what the fuck's going on there, right? This country is like, and I consider myself an atheist, in case you don't know. This country is prone to conspiratorial thinking. I mean, again, we were, like, the country's founding was slave owners that wanted to be free. Like, and people think, oh yeah, freedom, liberty. Oh yeah, Thomas Jefferson, he's liberty and freedom. Like, they actually think that, right? And so this country is just founded on conspiracy theories. Like, it's founded on the idea that the dumbest motherfucker is going to be the one that wins. And I think 2016 showed that. Like, Donald Trump won, and he's a dumb motherfucker. But, like, there's this movement of people that are violent. They're angry. They hate everyone. They think that, Biden's going to try to kill them, right? And they have guns, and they're willing to use them. On January 6th, it showed there are people willing to be violent, and there's enough people that are just willing to go with the flow. And that's the other thing. It's like, if you have 10 people that are like ex-Navy SEALs in there, and they can have cover of like 800 people, 900, and 1,000 people, and it makes them move easier, right? So if you've got a country where there's millions and millions and millions of just stupid, dumb fuck for brains motherfuckers out there that think the election was stolen, you know, like they're basically like Jews in Nazi Germany because, you know, I'm a pureblood, that kind of shit, right? That's enough stupid motherfuckers out there to give the real dangerous people like the cover that they need to do these things. And again, I you know, you look at what's going on with Kyle Rittenhouse. I think that's inextricably linked, in my opinion, right? Like, where they're celebrating him. He's a hero, the Kenosha kid. He's part of like their mythology. Ashley Babbitt is a martyr. She died for democracy or whatever. I mean, like, it doesn't, like, they don't need to be like, Jews will not replace us to, like, you know, act in that way. Like, if you can program that many people to do anything you want, like Trump has done, that's a problem. I don't even know, like let's assume Trump's like dies tomorrow of a heart attack. They're not going to go away, right? We have to figure out what to do with, like, you know, we've got this large amount of Americans that are just fucking dumb. They're dumb as fuck. I mean, you know, you might not know this, but my viewers are going to freak out when I'm about to say. So there's a study done in 2019 that said 95% of Americans do not get enough fiber, you know, in their diets, right? Now, you know, just bear with me here. That means only 5% of Americans eat vegetables. Like, that's how that translates to me. Now, I don't know about you. I try to eat my vegetables, right? But when you live in a country where only 5% of the citizens know how to cook vegetables for themselves, I think that's a problem, right? We are in American society, we are all over the fucking place. You know, 70% of people believe Jesus is, you know, and snakes and all that stupid shit, right? 50% of Republicans, that's like what, 20% of the country that believe the election was stolen, right? There's these people that have guns, they're willing to be like violent, right? How do we get out of this? You know, like, we can't just say January 6th was no big deal, let's move on, because these people aren't moving on. What do we do about, the liberals aren't doing jack shit. They're going to fuck us up. They're going to ruin this whole thing that they've got going on. They've got all three fucking things, and they're not doing shit. They're going to lose it in 2022. I think Trump is going to win in 2024. I think he's going to fuck us up. I think, like, the first term Trump, we thought that was bad. My God, I'm going to get the hell out of here, right? I think that what we're dealing with is a country that's falling the fuck apart. And that's what I think January 6th is really symbolic of. We're in a country that is falling the fuck apart. Is there going to be a United States in 10 years? I don't think so. I just spat all over the place. I don't know if that was visible. But anyway, that's my soliloquy.
Yeah. Well, I will try to not do another one of those because I already did one, and
It's all good.
if I
Yeah.
do it, if I do another one and you do another one, then we're definitely going to be here for longer than I probably should, since I should actually jet in a few minutes. I have to get ready at one. I have to teach my class at the Michael Alberts thing.
Are you
The
gonna
school
tell
for
them that you were on Above It All this morning? It's like, hey,
so,
students, I was on Above It All. Go check it out.
that's right. That's right. I'll check it out. Yeah, there might be some viewers. I mean, Michael Albert's an anarchist, so
All right.
the but anyway, I guess I tried to be like more succinct than maybe comes naturally to me for the sake of that.
Absolutely.
Do you think that there'll be a United States in 10 years? All the things I'm worried about that's not in the list, and I do think, and I do not think that who on the grassroots level has a gun is going to determine who's in power. The reason I don't think that is that I think that the American state is. First of all, I think the American state is terrifyingly well armed, and it's one of the reasons that. Although I do agree with some of what you said about the, I probably would go along with. Anyway, putting the terminology aside, right? Like I do agree with some of what you said about the the summer of 2020. That it's a sort of organic, that it's an explosion of outrage over outrageous things. But just as I didn't think that even if there were things that happened then that sort of have the look like the optics of what would happen during like an actual revolution that that might be successful, like the police station in Minneapolis burning, sort of looks like something that that you would see as part of like the Arab Spring or whatever. That for some of the same reasons, I didn't think there was any scenario that was going to translate into an actual revolution. Don't think that there's any scenario where militia violence on the right, is going to translate into like a successful coup or civil war or anything like that. I think the American state is pretty secure. Not necessarily a good thing, but true. And I think that and I think most importantly, I think fascism comes to power under circumstances where capitalist class is so terrified that they're going to lose their power and their privileges completely if they don't do that, that they end up turning to it as a last resort. And because it is a last resort, because honestly that shit is bad for business. That it's very destabilizing. It can turn on them in some ways. Like I think there's a reason why usually model they prefer is that we have different parties, we have elections, but everything's pretty under control from their perspective. Nothing that happens through that system is really going to threaten them that much. I think that's a much more stable way for the capitalist death machine to keep churning and the profits to keep being stacked up, while people are going through those awful conditions that you were just describing. So I guess. Yeah, I guess this is a big question, and since I am the one who does have an out, plus it's your show, maybe you should have the last word. But I guess I'd just say that when you're saying, well, you don't want to sort of move on, from it, or say it's not that. Not that big a deal, which is certainly not, words that I would use, right? I mean, again, I compared it to September 11th, which is certainly a huge deal for many, thousands of families, who had somebody die, but, was not the level of deal that was portrayed as being, as this civilizational threat, to the United States. So I guess my question would be what's the way that continuing to focus on it is going to make scenario where Trump wins again less likely, as opposed to realistically at this point it just detracted attention. There's so much, there's only so much sort of energy to go around. There's only so much sort of go around, right? Like that, like as opposed to being a way of like giving liberals cover for like not actually doing anything that would help with those conditions that you're talking about, and then thus make it more likely that Trump, or even if Trump has a heart attack, because he's definitely not part of the 5% of the population that eats their vegetables, or even if it's not Trump, then like whoever, right, is Tucker Carlson or God knows, right, like whatever ghoul could like become the new champion of the Republican base. Sentence got away from me, but I think you got the idea.
Yeah, I think I direct my critique at liberals first and foremost, because I think that right-wingers are not part of any conversation I want to have. Like, again, they're all dumb motherfuckers to me. If they all died tomorrow, I would celebrate. I don't value their humanity at all. If they are going to, like, base their entire ideology on killing people like me, I'm a trans person, right? So, like, to me, that's the Republican mantra. Look at everything they've passed in all these states. They want to basically exterminate trans people from existence. So if that's your thing, I don't even value as a human. I'm not going to talk to you about anything. I don't give a shit. So I direct a lot of my criticisms at liberals in having this discussion, right? I think it's very, very important to make sure that liberals know that they're not getting off the hook, know that I don't agree with them, right? I've had many, like, liberals come into my stream, Democrat people that go like, oh, January 6th is so bad, because I do a lot of January 6th coverage, and then they come in here, and then sometimes when I'm shit-talking Biden, they'll go like, oh, but, and I'm like, no, you don't understand, this shit is bad, right? Like, again, I don't think that we need to, like, have a coup or, anything win for things to get really bad. Like, if Trump wins again in 2024, I have no idea what that's going to spell. I don't know how 2028 would look. I don't know, because, again, look at all these voting laws that they're doing. Democrats aren't doing anything about the voting and election laws that are going on in this country. That's probably just the gerrymandering. Look at what happened in Ohio, where Ohio's going to have 80% seats for Republicans, but only like 54% vote for Republicans. What the fuck? Right? So I don't think that they need to necessarily have this big, oh, look, we're going to enter a new Wikipedia page for the Second American Empire. Like, they don't need that kind of event for them to have permanent power over the world. And I do think that, again, if Trump has the government, right, look at what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. He walked. He went to a protest. He knew he wanted to kill people. He said on tape before he wanted to kill people. He killed people. He walked. If Trump and Biden was like, oh, whatever, I agree with the jury. What the fuck? But imagine Trump in office. This is another important thing that happened last year that I wanted to bring up real quick, is the killing of Michael Ryanel. That he killed someone in Portland, right? There was not that much video. It's hard to tell if it's justified or not, but he killed a Trump supporter in Portland. He ran the fuck away and then got fucking assassinated by the U.S. Marshals. It came out late. Well, they said at the time that he was trying to shoot them, but then it came out later. All the witnesses said, no, that never happened. He was just shot randomly, right? So it's like, and Trump went on TV to say, yep, that was a great thing. Right? That's what I'm afraid of in 2024. If Trump's the president, he's installed all these people in the judgeships, right? All the cops love Trump, right? They're not going to do anything. They're going to go out there and kill left-wing activists for fun and then get away with it, right? That's a huge problem, is the lack of oversight, right? When you see a world where paramilitaries are allowed to organize, like that happened in Kenosha last year, where the cops were working with paramilitary vigilante squads with guns, like, again, and they were just like ragtag teenagers with guns that wanted to pretend to be in Call of Duty, right? That shows that, okay, law enforcement can just deputize these people, doesn't need to be official, doesn't need to be legal. They can go kill people. The cops told them to go there. They went there. They killed people, and now they're off. That spells a message for disaster, and liberals are not equipped to go against that. We can't even get, like, universal pre-K in this bill or whatever. Like, we can't get paid family leave in this, like, basic ass shit. Like that. Like, we're not asking for, like, McMansions for all. We're asking for, like, maybe give me an extra toenail clipper or something. Like, we're asking for something here, and they're not doing jack shit. And that's my problem, is the Republicans are fucking crazy, the liberals are asleep at the wheel, and we're just in the back seat, you know, like with a cliff in front of us, and we're not, you know, that's my thing. And I think that we need to like protect ourselves individually. And so I think that it's less of like the insurrection, like, you know, like you're watching a movie or like a Netflix documentary series or something, and more so of like that's a stepping stone, that's an event, that's like it's part of the right-wing mythology now, right? Like it's like they know that they can get away with that kind of a thing, and you know, like, and there's a lot of people that didn't go to January 6th that agree with it, and like they didn't want to like spend their you know, because when you get thrown in jail, you get thrown in jail. They didn't want to spend that energy to getting thrown in jail. They wanted to wait, see how it goes, prepare for the next one, right? We're dealing with a lot of problems in this country, and I think that January 6th exemplifies that. I think that it's like, you look at what happened on January 6th, you can convince a bunch of dumb motherfuckers to storm the Capitol, and they can do it. Like, look what happened in 2020. No one could get anywhere near the Capitol in the protests in 2020, and you look at what happened in January 6th, and that's a big problem. But anyway, I'm down to have any more conversations about this in the future, whatever. We were originally going to talk about other things, but that didn't end up happening. But, you know, okay. I hope that I was not, like, super rude. I hope that, you know, we're on good terms. I don't know. What's your opinion?
Yeah, we're on good terms. I think, I mean, look, I think that, that stuff that, you know, the initial you know, the initial interaction, like I will say for the record, right, the only thing that I was ever mad at you about for was the stuff that you said about me. That's it, right? Okay. You know, that's you know, other than that, right, you know, there's never any issue from my perspective. And I think we're good on all of that now. I think, so there you go. That's the fourth January 6th discussion I've had. If anyone wants to have a fifth one, I don't know, just like, you know, vary it up. Let's do half of it about something else.
Sure.
You know, but with you, since we've had our January 6th discussion, whatever the other topics are that people wanted us to talk about, I'm happy to talk about in the future. I hope that was productive or clarifying.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our initial interactions were just miscommunication, I think. And I think that there's a level of severity that you might not agree with, but that's fine. I'm willing to accept that we disagree on the levels of severity or whatever. That's fine. But I'm glad that we had this conversation as well, because, I like having conversations. And I think that you listen to what I had to say, I listened to what you had to say, and I hope that we can both walk away from this with like kind of a different perspective that maybe we didn't think about previously.
Fair enough. Thanks, Andrea.
All right, y'all have a good one, and tell your students about me, or else.
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Oh, okay. Whoa, this shit's broken. It's broken, folks. It's broken. All right, I need to go pee like really bad. So real quick. And I'll be back for